Hello and welcome. This podcast is part of the Victorian Bicultural Workers Network, facilitated by CoHealth's Bicultural program. Through these conversations, bicultural workers share their community's experiences of mental health, well-being, and accessing supports. These stories are shared to help mainstream services better understand the needs, strengths, and perspectives of refugee and migrant communities, and to reflect on how they can work more effectively and safely alongside them. Before we begin, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the lands of the Wurundjeri, Wurrung, and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respect to elders past and present, and we acknowledge that this work takes place on unceded, stolen land. We recognise the enduring leadership, strength and wisdom of First Nations people in navigating, surviving and challenging colonial systems, and in bridging divides to support the well-being of their communities. My name is Jasmine Phillips, and I'm the Bicultural Program Lead at CoHealth. Joining me on the podcast today is Walter Zimbi. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your cultural background?
My name is Walter Zimbi, and I'm an Anglophone Cameroonian living in Western Melbourne in Australia. And I moved to Australia in 2015 and presently working as a mental health peer worker at Brimbank Local Mental Health and Wellbeing Service. Being an Anglophone Cameroonian, Cameroon is bilingual, it's French and English. And the English-speaking part is the minority that were colonized by the British, and the French-speaking part are the majority that were being colonized by the French. But being the minority group, I think we are the ones that are being oppressed in Cameroon.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it's really important context because it helps us understand the diverse and differing perspectives of a single community that some people, not everybody will have the same experiences of growing up in Cameroon.
Yeah.
So from your experience, what do you think are some of the greatest strengths of the Cameroonian community?
I think their greatest strength is their resilience and their adaptability. Having grown up in an area where there is hardship and moving to new areas, whether it's political or social, when coming to new areas, they are able to adapt. But the system most of the time is overwhelming and stressful to be able to go through the new system of the new environment. So they are always able to adapt and keep yourself okay.
You're talking about your community has been through a lot of hardship and migration and oppression. What do you think are some of the ways that your community might be understanding or talking about their mental health in that context?
I think mental health, first of all, talking about mental health is a taboo for them, and they see it they always embrace it as a shame. And most of the time, they don't normally talk about it. One of the things that they have been doing is they are always linked to a person that is closer to them to explain most of the mental instability they are going through. And through from there, they might be able to move forward based on the experience the person you are confining to has been in the past. So through their own experiences, they might be able to come out with something like strategies that might be able to cope with.
Obviously, your community speaks English, but what kind of language do you think people use to talk about their mental distress or their poor mental health? And where does stigma come into that language?
I think most of the time, mental health is looked at being mad and
Mm.
not. I think madness is the word that they have been using in the past. But being someone like from my own experience, if I have to tell someone about my mental health struggles, I won't say I'm mad. I will talk about I'm struggling, I have struggles, I have troubles, and all those kind of things are the kind of language that might push me to be able to open up about my situation. So people don't normally talk about like your mental health issues because whenever you mention about your issues, it's perceived like you're 100% mad.
Mm. And obviously, your experience in Australia is quite unique because you're working as a peer worker in a mental health space. Having that understanding of how people might perceive mental health or talking about mental health as the suggestion that somebody is mad or crazy, How do you bridge that in your work as a peer worker when you're working with people from migrant or refugee communities? What do you do to make them feel safe to talk about their mental health?
I think one of the things that I think I got interested into peer support when I heard about the position, it made me reflect in the past what we have been using and what have been helping, especially people from my community. Most of the time, you confine with the person that you feel safe and trust to talk about your experiences of what you have been going through. I think it's the same strategy I've been using to working with people that have mental health distress or one way or the other. I always start by sharing my own experience, giving them that assurance that they are not by themselves, giving them that assurance that I have my own experiences. Any way that I might be able to share that will instill a level of hope to them would make it beneficial in my interaction with them. So
Mm.
most of the time, they always want to hear your own side of the story to be able to gather from that your own experience and see what they can do.
What are some of the traditional ways that people back home or from your culture might be using or engaging with to seek support that's different to how we offer mental health support in Australia?
I think one of the most important one is assuring understanding.
Mm.
When someone comes to you and tells their story, you should express some sort of understanding about their situation. And there are other parts of the story that they might make some choices on how they want to move forward. You have
Mm.
to respect their choices or how they want to move forward after understanding their situation. It's not like you are implementing some like therapeutic measures. Some people, their mental health struggles is being triggered by a lot of like their well-being needs. And those well-being needs at that point is put forward before thinking about therapeutic means. You have to address their well-being needs before you move to their therapeutic means. I think there have been that lack of understanding between when it comes to like clinical approach for mental health and that of neglecting the part about the well-being. People just want to implement therapies. In my culture, it has never been about that. We look at those things that are so important for the person to address before looking forward to the other clinical part of it. So we address their well-being needs. People might come and explain their situation about their struggles mentally, of which one of the things that they will mention in their consultation is all about their finances. If there is a means you can link them for ways they can have a little bit of finances, it will be helpful. It will be very helpful to stabilize them a little bit. People might come that are they lack accommodation. Trying to address that gives a little bit of normality to their mental health situation.
Thank you so much for talking about that. I think it's so often in many services, whether it's mental health or physical health, the social determinants or the social needs of an individual are often seen as separate to a person's physical or mental health. Whereas what you're explaining is that in order for a person to move forward with their recovery, they need housing, they need food, they need financial security in order to be able to then relieve the stress and the pressure of those social concerns before addressing perhaps some of the other mental health concerns that they might have. Such an important point. I'm wondering in your community, what role does faith or other traditional forms of healing play in a person's mental health recovery?
I think in my culture, the one of the rules of like spirituality has been one of the things that have been helpful in the fact that people have their faith in whatever religion they have, and most of the teachings of those religions is on hope, and majority of them rely on hope that things will get better. They get that those assurance from their religion, thinking that whatever they are going through mentally or physically it will get through one day. So they keep holding on to prayers, holding on to worship as a means of getting through what they are going through.
I'm wondering as well, you talked about how people need to feel heard and feel like there's a shared experience and mutual understanding in order to build that trust for people to open up. And people who engage with your service are really lucky to have someone like you who can build those bridges for them. But what do you think are some of the challenges that people from your community face when engaging with mainstream mental health or health services more broadly?
I think one of those things is about trust. I think they have lost trust totally when it comes to the settings that we have presently in place, for the fact that most of them have attempted to get help, and what they experience is not what they are looking after. I think most of the services are not equipped with multicultural, like people from different cultures that might be able to understand better what people are going through. Coming from my own culture, when I have someone coming from my culture, whatever they say, I truly and I totally understand where they are coming from. Their background too is very important to take into consideration on their situation, what they are going through. So there have to be a level of understanding when it comes to people accessing help in a service.
I think it's interesting in the mental health sector, we're doing really well in employing peer workers who have a shared lived experience of mental illness. But we're not doing so well in employing people from migrant or refugee backgrounds, from diverse cultural backgrounds, who have that added level of understanding about the challenges and the complexities a person faces being a refugee, being a migrant, being a persecuted minority. You're talking so much about those lived experience components being really essential to building trust and mutual understanding when people walk through the service. I wonder if you could talk a bit about what are the key things that you wish mainstream organizations really understood about your community in order to better support them?
I think one of the things that I will say, I think the main thing is they can get live experience migrant workers, especially those from my community or other communities. They should be represented in each of the services that they are offering. When you have live experience workers, they help to bridge that gap that is sitting between the understanding of people's situation. Me working in the locals, this at Sunshine, I think I've been able to hold that space for especially people coming from my cultural background and other cultural backgrounds that are similar to mine. I've been
Mm.
able to hold that space in the fact that most of the consumers that are coming, I'm the one being the first of point of contact to them before translating to the rest of the multidisciplinary team on what their issues are and what they
Mm.
really are going through.
Mm.
So employing and bringing in more live experience workers from bicultural backgrounds will be very beneficial to services.
And I want to ask you a little bit about that because I've been having lots of conversations across different mental health services recently about what that bicultural worker role needs to look like. Is it essential that we have a worker from every cultural community in order to pair people from the same cultural background together? Or what level of similarity needs to be culturally for people to be able to work in that way together where there's mutual understanding and trust?
I understand it's difficult to really get workers, well, bicultural workers from every community, but we can group them in such a way that we can get bicultural workers from each region.
Mm.
We have West Africans, we have East Africans, and we have Northern Africans. So
Mm.
if you can get a worker from each of those regions, it will be beneficial to services. And it's not like you can even get them and train them to give them some sort of training. It's easy. It's just like using your own life experience to be able to support others, which will be beneficial to services.
You've really talked about how those bicultural worker lived experience roles are supporting the clients or the consumers as they come through into services. What are some of the benefits you think bicultural workers can bring to improve practice across the whole organization?
I think one of the main things is that language barrier. That
Mm.
language barrier even though they might be able to speak English, but there's still that communication between cultures that are so vital. Me coming from my own culture, I can communicate easily with someone from my culture, even if we are not speaking English, even if it's
Mm.
English, the understanding and everything, it matters so much. Another thing is like an interpretation. They have the knowledge of what the struggles people are going through from different cultures, from their own cultures. So they are knowledgeable to tell you what to do, what not to do, what are their communication styles. All those things matters. They are the things that represent like understanding about someone, where they are coming from, and be
Mm.
able to make them culturally safe enough to be able to come out and trust you and be able to disclose their issues to you.
I know in my team, what often is communicated is that bicultural workers are really good at building relationships and trust with their communities. But what happens is when you inevitably need to refer people into that clinical support and the relationship breaks down because the practitioner may not have that shared understanding, the language, the lived experience, or the cultural background. What do you want those clinicians to understand about what they can do to improve their practice so that the handover from you to them is smoother and the continuation of care can happen more effectively?
One of the things I've been advocating at my service is flexibility. When we create relationship with people, especially people from our cultural backgrounds, you create that relationship, you do referral to clinical services. There is that flexibility that I always try to advocate on their behalf. I always make sure I tell them to try their best to understand, because I think one of the challenges has been they are not willing to be flexible when it comes to supporting people from different cultural backgrounds. They don't have that patience to be able to listen and try to match the style and the culture the person is coming from. So there is always those challenges, but advocating, I just keep advocating to make sure that there is that level of flexibility on how to support someone from a bicultural background.
Mm, amazing. Oh, Walters, you've given us so much to think about, and I'm so grateful for your wisdom and your sharing, both from your lived experience and your professional expertise as a peer worker in the mental health space. So, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your insights. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share or to add to make sure that it's heard in the podcast?
What I would like to say is we have to continue to open our mouths and for our voices to be heard when it comes to support mental health support for people coming from migrant backgrounds. I think it is showing that more have to be done with the fact that people are not still accessing support, and people, especially people from my community, are struggling mentally. But for them to seek support from services is something that is holding them back. I think the system have to like come out with things that will make them feel safe enough to come and seek for support when needed. So services have to co-design their ways of supporting people.
Beautiful. Thank you. I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you so much for your time, and let's keep the conversation going.